Hello everyone, I am your host, Deanna Lukens. This project is brought to you by Dakota Wesleyan University's Scholarly Research and Writing class. Welcome to my documentary series that is focused on tiny versus conventional sized homes. At the end of this series, you will be able to infer that tiny houses are overall better for the economy, the environment, and the social aspects in life rather than conventional housing. The following information is brought to you by The Tiny Life. In this article by Ryan Mitchell, he discusses the dimensions of a tiny home. Ryan states that tiny homes can range anywhere from 60 to 600 square feet. Ryan also states that anything less than 60 square feet is unlivable for an average human being. This is when the house starts to become more like a shed or an accessory for an average home. In episode 2, we will discuss some more of the prices per square footage. In the meantime, you might be wondering, hey, I want a tiny home, but what kinds of tiny homes are there for me to choose from? Tiny houses have been around for centuries. Different types of tiny houses are A-frame, sheds, shipping containers, teardrop style, school buses, most commonly referred to as schoolies, yurts, barndos, cargo trailers, or even a van. Now, you may be wondering what the heck these type of houses are. Let's start with shed living. A shed, as shown in picture 7, is typically used to do DIY projects, work on cars, or even use power tools. Shed living is simple, and today you can buy a shed from Home Depot that is already set up for tiny house living. According to Ryan, shed living is cheap and easy to hook up necessities like water and power. Shed living is also adaptable, and you can choose many different layouts for your shed. In shed living, a lot like most tiny houses, you can have a loft on the inner part of the shed to maximize your usage of the small space. A double-wide home, which is not pictured here, is not considered a tiny home. This type of home can be anywhere from around 946 to 2,187 square feet. According to Tyrone Woods, one great thing about double-wide homes is the living space offered. The fact that they can offer more than 2,000 square feet means the customizations can be endless. The best part of double-wide homes is that even though they are not considered tiny homes, they are still an excellent choice in choosing a forever home. Teardrop living, as shown in Pic 3, is exactly like the name suggests. You live in a teardrop-shaped camper that is typically smaller than a conventional-sized camper. A teardrop trailer can be built from scratch or bought from a camper supplier like Jack's Campers, for example. These teardrop trailers originated back in the 1950s. A small camper like this can be pulled with a small car, so you would not have to make a purchase for a truck. Teardrop campers, however, do not typically have a lot of room for a bed plus the other living necessities, so you would be living off of the land. A-frame houses, as shown in picture 1, are another form of tiny houses where the name suggests exactly what they are. The roof and outer walls are made up of shingles from top to bottom and represent an A-like shape. Lofts can be utilized in a home this shape, but be careful not to hit your head on the top. Shipping containers, as shown in picture 2, are one of my favorite forms of tiny houses. They could be made from old shipping crates, typically used to transport vehicles and other materials for trade from across seas. The shipping containers can be stacked on top of each other and set up in different shapes. They are extremely convenient when it comes to utilizing the space you are provided. Barndos, as shown in picture 5, are typically shaped and built like normal barns. They can be used to live in the top of the barn and park vehicles or other toys like a four-wheeler in the bottom half. Cargo living, in picture 8, is living in a cargo trailer that you have set up primarily similar to a camper. This type of living is easy, but often you cannot pull the cargo trailer with a small car, which offers a little bit of inconvenience. Yurts, in picture 6, are a round structure that typically is represented as a round tent. They were native to Mongolia and were used by the nomadic groups across Mongolia and Turkey. In Mitchell's website, he also mentions the history behind the yurt and what yurt truly means. Yurt is a Turkish word that means home. When you want to utilize a yurt for your tiny home, it could be simple and affordable. You could add a patio as seen in the picture I presented for you. The next type of tiny house is one that I could see myself living in. Schoolies, aka school buses, and vans are pictured in picture 4, and we will go over schoolies in the next screen. A schoolie is slang for a school bus. A really good example of school bus living is the Busload of Books tour that has been traveling across the United States, sharing their books and life with multiple elementary schools. When they stopped in Mitchell, South Dakota, I was ecstatic to view their bus and how they have it set up to live with their dog, 4 children, and themselves. The typical dimensions for a school bus is a bus that is large enough to hold 30 to 40 students. The school bus that Matthew and his wife Robbie live in is much smaller and can hold 10 to 15 students if it has the seats. When you live in a school bus, you can set it up similarly to a camper. The way that Matthew and Robbie have their bus set up is that they have a small kitchenette, 2 dining room tables, one of which turns into a bed for Matthew and Robbie, and then a pop-up bedroom on the top of the bus for the children. They maximized their space in the bus quite nicely and uniquely. Now, a van can be made for the exact same usage. You can take out the seats and set your van up any way you would like. The only thing you may want to consider is water and electrical hookups for your van or school bus. Now, living in a van or school bus may bring up some questions and concerns on whether or not you can live in a bus in some states or even in some countries around the world. There is a lovely website that lists all of the U.S. states and rates them on a scale of 1 to 10 on how tiny house friendly they are. Most U.S. states are rated on the upper side of 5 with their friendliness towards tiny homes. You do, however, need to check your city and state restrictions and regulations when getting a permit to build or drive a tiny house. When living in a bus or van, you may want to make sure you read into how to register the vehicle properly as an RV. The color of your bus or van also makes a difference on whether or not it is illegal to live in it for a long duration of time. The bus or van cannot be yellow or painted to match prison transport vehicles. Matthew and Robbie had creatively painted their bus to match the Busload of Books tour they were completing. As for building a tiny house around the world, you will always want to make sure you check with the zoning regulations and restrictions for wherever you plan to live. While researching the restrictions and regulations for tiny homes or bus living around the world, I could not come up with much information on whether or not they are illegal. Like I had said, please make sure you check the zoning laws to avoid imprisonment and fees. Thank you for sticking with me on episode 1 of my Tiny Home Show.